The morning sun had barely risen over South Chicago when a young boy sat at his family's worn kitchen table, counting coins with trembling fingers. At just 12 years old, his small hands showed early signs of hard work, tiny calluses forming from hours of gripping brushes and polishing shoes. $312, he whispered to himself, carefully wrapping the coins in a cloth before hiding them in an old cookie tin. The amount seemed so small compared to what he needed, but he refused to let despair take over. His 8-year-old sister needed him. Life hadn't been easy since their father passed away 2 years ago. Their mother worked endless hours at the diner and cleaning houses, but even with 2 jobs, they'd barely made ends meet. Then came the news that shattered their world. His sister needed heart surgery, and it would cost $75,000. He remembered that morning clearly. His mother had tried to hide her tears as she made breakfast, but he could see her hands shaking as she stirred the oatmeal. "We'll figure something out," she'd said, more to herself than to anyone else. But he had already made up his decision. In their small apartment's closet, wrapped in an old blanket, lay his father's prized possession, a professional shoe-shining kit. His dad had used it to put himself through night school, dreaming of giving his family a better life. Now it would serve another purpose. That evening, while his sister slept in their shared bedroom, he carefully opened the kit. The brushes were still in perfect condition, and the polishes, though old, were still usable. He spent hours on YouTube, learning the proper techniques, practicing on his own worn-out shoes until his fingers ached. "What are you doing?" his mother asked, finding him asleep at the kitchen table, surrounded by polish and brushes. "I'm going to help," he declared, his young voice filled with determination. "Dad always said there's honor in honest work. I'm going to shine shoes downtown, before and after school." His mother's eyes filled with tears, but these were different from her usual worried ones. She pulled him close, her work-worn hands gentle against his back. "You're too young to carry such burdens," she whispered. "I'm not too young to help my sister," he replied, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "And I'm not too young to help you." The next morning, he woke up before dawn. His mother had packed him a warm thermos of hot chocolate and some sandwiches. With his father's kit in one hand and hope in his heart, he headed toward the busy downtown area. He found a spot near the financial district where business people hurried past in expensive shoes. Setting up his small wooden stool and arranging his supplies just like his father used to, he took a deep breath. The first few people walked past without a glance, but he remained undaunted. "Shoe shine," he called out, his voice growing stronger with each attempt. "Best shine in Chicago, just like my dad used to do." The morning crowd continued to rush by, but he stayed focused, remembering his sister's brave smile despite her illness. This wasn't just about shining shoes, it was about love, family, and keeping promises. And so he waited, ready to earn every dollar that would bring them closer to hope. Winter in Chicago showed no mercy to a young boy with dreams. The bitter wind cut through his second-hand coat as he set up his shoe shine stand each morning. His fingers, red from cold, carefully arranged the brushes and polishes while steam rose from passing strangers' coffee cups. The first week had been the hardest. He'd only made $23, and his heart sank each time someone walked past without a glance. But giving up wasn't an option, not when his sister's breathing grew more labored with each passing day. One particularly cold morning, an elderly security guard from a nearby building brought him a cup of hot chocolate. "You remind me of myself at your age," the guard said, settling onto the wooden stool. "I worked odd jobs to help my family too." As he polished the guard's worn boots, the boy shared his story, speaking of his sister's illness and the mounting medical bills. Word spread among the building's security staff, and soon they became his regular customers. They didn't have much money themselves, but they understood struggle. Each one would leave a little extra tip, along with words of encouragement that warmed him more than any hot drink could. 3 months passed this way. He developed a routine. Wake up at 4:30 a.m., catch the first bus downtown, set up his stand by 6 a.m., work until school started, then return after classes until sunset. His mother worried about his studies, but his grades stayed strong. He'd do his homework under streetlights while waiting for customers. His sister tried to help too, despite her weakness. She'd sort his polished cloths each evening and tell him stories about her day while he practiced his technique. "When I get better," she'd say, her voice soft but determined. "I'll help you shine shoes too." He'd just smile and tuck a blanket tighter around her shoulders. The cookie tin now held $2,300, every penny earned through honest work. But time wasn't on their side. His sister's doctor had started using words like urgent and critical during their visits. The weight of responsibility pressed heavier on his young shoulders with each passing day. Some mornings were particularly tough. A group of older kids would pass by, making fun of his dirty job. But he remembered his father's words, "No honest work is beneath you if it helps your family." So he held his head high and focused on making each pair of shoes shine like mirrors. One rainy Tuesday, a businessman in an expensive suit stopped suddenly at his stand. The man looked down at his mud-splattered shoes, then at the boy's determined face. "How much?" he asked gruffly. $5, sir," the boy replied, already reaching for his brushes. "I guarantee they'll look better than new." The businessman sat down, watching skeptically as small hands worked with professional precision. When he stood up, his shoes gleamed despite the dreary weather. He looked at his reflection in the leather, then at the boy's hopeful face. Reaching into his wallet, he pulled out a $50 bill. "Sir, I can't break such a big bill," the boy said honestly. "Keep it," the man replied, his voice softer now. "You've got skill, kid, real skill." As he walked away, the boy carefully added the money to his tin, trying not to let hope soar too high. Every dollar brought them closer to their goal, but $75,000 still seemed like an impossible mountain to climb. That evening, as he counted his daily earnings at the kitchen table, his sister's cough echoed from their bedroom. He closed his eyes, holding back tears. Tomorrow would be another day of trying, another day of hoping, another day of believing that somehow they'd find a way. The spring rain poured mercilessly over Chicago that morning, but the young shoe shiner remained at his post, a tattered umbrella protecting his supplies. His regular customers, the security guards, office workers, and kind-hearted strangers, had noticed how his face had grown thinner, his eyes more worried. His sister's condition was getting worse. A young woman carrying a camera hurried past, then stopped suddenly. She'd seen this boy every morning for weeks, working diligently regardless of the weather. Today, something made her turn back. Perhaps it was the sight of his small hands, red from cold, still carefully polishing a businessman's shoes. Or maybe it was the quiet determination in his eyes, too mature for someone so young. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" she asked, crouching down beside his stand. She was a local news reporter, though not yet well known. "I've seen you here every day. What drives you to work so hard?" The boy looked up, rain dripping from his umbrella. For a moment he hesitated. His mother had taught him to be careful with strangers. But something in her gentle expression made him trust her. "It's for my sister," he said softly, continuing to polish as he spoke. "She needs heart surgery. Mom works 2 jobs, but it's not enough. The doctors say we don't have much time, but I'm not giving up." The reporter listened as he explained his journey, about his father's old shoe shine kit, about waking up before dawn, about counting coins each night. She filmed as he worked, capturing the methodical way he transformed scuffed leather into gleaming mirrors. "How much have you saved?" she asked. $2,872, he answered precisely. "The surgery costs $75,000. His voice didn't waver. The impossible number had long since lost its power to discourage him. "And you still believe you can make it?" The boy paused his polishing, looking directly into the camera. "My sister never gives up fighting to breathe, so I won't give up fighting to help her breathe easier." That evening, the reporter edited her footage with trembling hands. She'd covered many stories, but none had moved her like this. She posted the 3-minute video on her social media accounts before heading home, hoping it might generate some local interest in the boy's cause. By midnight, the video had hundreds of shares. By morning, thousands. People were touched by the young boy's dedication, his unwavering love for his sister, his refusal to accept defeat. Comments poured in from around the city, then the country. "This is what real heroes look like. Someone help this family. Where can we donate?" But viral fame didn't immediately translate into the help they desperately needed. While more customers began seeking out his shoe shine stand, most could only spare a few extra dollars as tips. The cookie tin was filling faster now, but time was running out. His sister's health continued to decline. That morning, she'd been too weak to get out of bed. As he worked his stand, his movements were mechanical, his mind back in their small apartment where his mother sat beside his sister's bed, counting her breaths. The video had been shared over 50,000 times now. News stations were calling the reporter, asking for interviews. But the boy kept working, focused on each shoe, each dollar, each step toward his goal. He couldn't afford to hope that someone would simply appear and solve their problems. His sister's life depended on his determination, not on wishes. What he didn't know was that among the thousands who had watched his story, one viewer had the power to change everything. And that person was already making plans to visit a certain shoe shine stand in downtown Chicago. In his penthouse office overlooking the Chicago skyline, one of the city's most successful tech entrepreneurs watched the viral video for the 5th time. The young shoe shiner's words echoed in his mind. "My sister never gives up fighting to breathe, so I won't give up fighting to help her breathe easier." The businessman closed his laptop and walked to the window. 25 years ago, he'd been that kid, not shining shoes, but selling newspapers on these same streets, trying to help his family make ends meet. Now, at 45, he was worth millions, but he'd never forgotten where he came from. "Cancel my meetings for tomorrow morning," he told his assistant through the intercom. He had something more important to do. The next day, he dressed differently. No designer suit, no expensive watch, just simple jeans and a worn jacket. He wanted to observe the boy without drawing attention. Walking through the familiar downtown streets, he spotted the shoe shine stand from a distance. The boy was already hard at work, his small hands moving with practiced precision over a pair of boots. Even from afar, the businessman could see the professional pride in every movement. This wasn't just a kid trying to make money, this was someone who took their craft seriously. He stopped at a nearby coffee cart, buying 2 hot chocolates. For an hour he watched. He saw how the boy treated every customer with the same respect, whether they wore expensive suits or work boots. He noticed how the boy kept his stand spotlessly clean, how he never rushed his work even when people were in a hurry. A woman dropped a $20 bill, and the boy ran half a block to return it. Another customer tried to pay with a credit card, and the boy politely explained he could only accept cash, recommending an ATM nearby. Every interaction showed character beyond his years. Finally, the businessman approached the stand. His shoes, intentionally scuffed for this purpose, needed a good shine. The boy looked up, offering a tired but genuine smile. "How much?" the businessman asked, settling onto the wooden stool. $5, sir," the boy replied, already reaching for his brushes. "Would you like the regular shine or the premium service with weather protection? The premium is $8. The businessman noted how the boy didn't automatically push the more expensive option. "What's the difference?" he asked. The boy explained the process in detail, demonstrating his knowledge of leather care. His voice grew animated as he described how the weather protection could extend the life of the shoes. It wasn't a sales pitch, it was honest expertise. "The regular shine will be fine," the businessman said, watching closely for any sign of disappointment. There was none. The boy simply nodded and began his work with the same care he'd shown every other customer. As small hands moved expertly over the leather, the businessman asked casual questions. About how long he'd been shining shoes, about what made him start, about his hopes for the future. The boy's answers were honest but careful. He didn't beg for sympathy or try to exploit his sister's situation. When asked about his dreams, he spoke simply of wanting his sister to be healthy, his mother to rest more, and maybe one day going to college like his father had hoped to do. When the shine was finished, the businessman studied his reflection in the leather. The work was impeccable. He reached for his wallet, pulling out a $100 bill. "Sir," the boy said firmly, "I can't accept that. The shine is $5. I don't take charity." The businessman saw something in the boy's eyes at that moment: pride, dignity, and an unwavering sense of self-worth. This was a child who understood that how you earn money matters as much as how much you earn. The businessman studied the boy's determined face for a long moment. The $100 bill still hung between them, a test of character in paper form. Around them, the city rushed by, unaware of this pivotal moment playing out on a busy street corner. "I'm not offering charity," the businessman said carefully. I'm paying what I think your work is worth. Look at these shoes. They're better than when I bought them new." The boy shook his head firmly. "My dad always said to have clear prices and stick to them. $5 is fair for everyone, whether they're rich or poor. That way, nobody feels cheated, and nobody feels like they owe me anything." The businessman slipped the $100 bill back into his wallet, replaced it with a 5, and handed it over. The boy accepted it with a polite "Thank you, sir," already turning to arrange his supplies for the next customer. "Would you mind if I sat here a while?" the businessman asked, moving to a nearby bench. "I'd like to see how you work with other customers." The boy nodded, though his expression showed slight confusion. Throughout the morning, the businessman watched as person after person stopped at the stand. Each received the same level of dedication, the same careful attention to detail. A construction worker came with badly scuffed boots. The boy spent extra time on them, not charging more despite the additional work. An elderly woman brought her husband's old dress shoes, explaining he was in the hospital. The boy listened patiently to her story while making the shoes shine like new. During a quiet moment, the businessman asked, "Don't you ever get tired of this? Wouldn't you rather be playing with friends or watching TV?" The boy paused in his work of cleaning his brushes. "Sometimes," he admitted honestly. "But then I think about my sister in her hospital bed, never complaining even when she's in pain. She's fighting harder than me every day just to breathe. This is the least I can do." The businessman watched as the boy handled a rude customer with grace, maintaining his composure when the man complained about a perfectly good shine. He observed how other street vendors looked out for the kid, bringing him hot soup on their breaks, making sure he ate lunch. "How much have you saved so far?" the businessman asked casually. $3,142, the boy replied without hesitation, plus today's earnings. "And how much do you need?" $75,000 for the surgery, the boy said, his voice steady despite the enormous number. "I know it's a lot, but every dollar counts. Even if it takes years, I'll keep working until I have enough." The businessman felt his throat tighten. He was a child who understood more about dignity, determination, and honest work than most adults he knew, who refused to be beaten down by circumstances that would crush grown men. As the afternoon wore on, the boy started packing up his supplies. He needed to get to his sister's hospital appointment. Every movement was careful, each brush cleaned thoroughly, each polish cap tightened properly. "You treat these tools like they're precious," the businessman observed. "They were my dad's," the boy replied softly. "He always said taking care of your tools is like taking care of your promises. If you let them get damaged, you're letting down everyone who depends on you." The businessman stood, brushing off his jeans. He'd seen everything he needed to see. This wasn't just a story about a boy shining shoes for his sister. This was a story about character, about the kind of values that money couldn't buy. The boy was closing his shoe shine box when the businessman spoke again. "Before you go, I have something to tell you." He pulled out a business card and handed it over. The boy's eyes widened as he read the name, one of Chicago's most successful tech entrepreneurs. "I grew up 3 blocks from where you live," the businessman said softly. "Sold newspapers on these same streets. Had a sister, too, who needed medical care we couldn't afford." He paused, letting the words sink in. "She didn't make it." The boy held the business card carefully, as if it might disappear. Around them, the evening rush hour was beginning, but they stood in their own quiet bubble of understanding. "I've been watching you all day," the businessman continued. "Not just your shoe-shining skills, though they're exceptional. I've been watching how you treat people, how you handle money, how you carry yourself with dignity no matter what comes your way." The boy clutched his father's shoe-shine kit closer, heart pounding. The businessman knelt down to meet his eyes. "I want to pay for your sister's surgery," he said simply. "All of it." The boy's hands began to shake. "Sir, I can't accept that. It's too much. I need to earn it myself." The businessman smiled gently. "You have earned it. Every day you've worked here, every shoe you've shined, every dollar you've saved, you've proven yourself worthy of help. But I have one condition." The boy straightened his shoulders, ready to hear the terms. "Promise me you'll stay in school, study hard, go to college when the time comes. Your father's shoe shine kit has taught you more about business ethics than most MBA programs, but education will open doors you can't imagine. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes, but he fought them back. What about my stand? My customers depend on me. Keep it, the businessman replied. Work weekends if you want. But your job now is to build a future your sister can be proud of, a future your father dreamed of. The dam broke. The boy's tears fell freely now, years of worry and fear and desperate hope pouring out. The businessman placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, remembering his own childhood dreams and struggles. I don't want to just give you money, the businessman explained. I want to invest in you, in your future, in the person you're already becoming. Through his tears, the boy managed to ask, why me? Because 25 years ago, I was you. But there was no one to help me, and I lost my sister. Now I have a chance to break that cycle, to show that hard work and integrity still matter, that dreams don't have to die because of money. He pulled out his phone, already dialing his assistant. We'll go to the hospital now. Meet your mother and sister. Get the paperwork started. Tomorrow, your sister gets her surgery. The boy hugged his shoe shine kit, his father's legacy that had led to this miracle. Thank you, he whispered, the words seeming too small for the magnitude of the moment. No, the businessman replied, his own eyes misting. Thank you for showing me that the values I grew up with, hard work, honesty, dignity, they're still alive. They still matter. Now let's go save your sister. 1 year later, the same downtown corner looked different. The simple shoe shine stand had grown into a proper kiosk with a small awning protecting it from rain and sun. The boy, now a teenager, still worked there every Saturday, but something had changed. Instead of desperation, his eyes now held hope. His sister's surgery had been successful. She was back in school, her cheeks rosy with health, her breath coming easily now. Sometimes she would sit with him at the stand, doing her homework and greeting regular customers who had become like family. The businessman had kept his word and done more. He'd created a foundation called Shine On, dedicated to helping children with medical needs. The story of the young shoe shiner had inspired others, and donations poured in from across the country. But the boy hadn't stopped working. Every weekend, he still transformed scuffed leather into gleaming mirrors, charging the same fair price. Success shouldn't change your values, he would say, repeating his father's words to the young kids who now came to learn from him. The foundation had started a mentorship program where the boy taught other children the art of shoe shining. But he taught them much more than that. He showed them about dignity in work, about the power of determination, about keeping your word no matter what life throws at you. His mother had finally been able to quit her second job. She now helped manage the foundation, sharing her experience to help other struggling families navigate the healthcare system. Their small apartment was still modest, but it was filled with laughter now instead of worry. The cookie tin that once held their desperate savings had been transformed into a scholarship fund. Every dollar the boy earned on weekends went into it, preparing for his college dreams. His grades had soared now that he could focus on school, and universities were already showing interest in the boy whose story had touched so many hearts. One crisp autumn morning, the businessman stopped by the stand. His shoes were already shining, but he sat down anyway. This had become their ritual. A weekly chat about life, dreams, and the future. The foundation helped its 100th family this week, the businessman said proudly. All because you showed us what courage looks like. The boy smiled, polishing his brushes with the same care he'd shown that first desperate morning. I just did what anyone would do for their family, he said softly. No, the businessman corrected. You did what few would have the strength to do. You kept your dignity when life tried to take it. You chose hope when despair would have been easier. A young girl approached the stand, dragging her feet. The boy recognized the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in the mirror not so long ago. My brother needs surgery, she said quietly. I want to learn to shine shoes too. The boy exchanged glances with the businessman, then patted the stool beside him. First lesson, he said, picking up his father's old brush. It's not about shining shoes. It's about holding on to hope, one shoe at a time. As he began teaching her the proper technique, her eyes started to brighten. Above them, the sign on his kiosk caught the morning sun, Shine On, where every shine brings hope. The businessman watched them work, remembering his own sister from long ago. He couldn't save her, but through this boy, through this foundation, through this simple shoeshine stand, her memory was helping save others. Sometimes the brightest light comes from the darkest moments, and sometimes the smallest acts of determination can change not just one life, but many.